He likes going after issues, you know.
My wife's out of town, I can go to all these.
She still without that.
Middle road.
Yeah.
They call it a trifecta, they had snow, snow, cold, and blowing, heavy blowing.
Well, I've been here next to the lake.
I remember.
Great, well, thank you.
Well, I work with him.
Oh, yeah.
He knows who that is.
On our way up to the hospital about 11 miles an hour.
No, it's,
But I only got as far as the airport, city airport.
Good evening. I'd like to call the January 28th Planning Commission meeting to order. Everyone stay with me and please say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll go ahead and start with roll call on my right.
Barber here. Gilmore here.
Kim Z here.
Mater here.
Lavella here.
Limer here.
Quorum is present. Just a quick announcement before we begin with the agenda this evening. I'd like to remind everybody of the Thursday Comprehensive Plan Workshop. Hope to see everybody in attendance. I believe that starts at 6:30 or 7 here?
5:30, I believe.
5:30?
No.
7.
Oh, sorry.
7, okay.
Thinking ended this.
7 o'clock here in council chambers. Go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the Planning Commission for study. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item from either the Planning Commission or from the floor, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Are there any items that any members of the commission would like to have removed from the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes as written for the meeting on December 17, 2013.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda made by Lavella with a second by Gilmore. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries with all in favor to approve the item, or actually the consent agenda. Moving on to new business item number 1. We have a preliminary plat 13-03 Madison Corner. Consider a preliminary plat for Madison Corner, an approximate 1.39 acre commercial development located at the southwest corner of Madison and Moonlight Streets, submitted by Jeff Laubach of Phelps Engineering Incorporated on behalf of Casey's Retail Company developer. We have a staff presentation this evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Michelle Leininger, Planning Manager. The item before you is a preliminary plat for Madison Corner. To give you some reference of the surrounding neighborhood, the subject property is shown outlined in red. The portion of a larger, 2 tracks, the corner of Madison Street and Moonlight Road. To the north, across Madison Street, is developed residential R1 properties. To the east, beyond the vacant property, is developed RP3 properties. And then surrounding to the east and south are developed commercial properties. Here's a zoomed-in piece of the plat. Just some things that I wanted to point out to you. The plat, which is actually outside of the platted lot, shows two proposed accesses to the property and the surrounding properties, one from Madison and one from Moonlight. The plat includes a proposed 5-foot sidewalk easement. Currently when developed, there would be a 10-foot sidewalk included on there, 5 foot of which would be on private property. This is why we have asked for that easement, to make sure that the public has utilization of that sidewalk. Additionally, there's some right-of-way to be dedicated along Moonlight. Currently, the public sidewalk is entirely on private property. This is the last little bit that, and then a little bit to the south of property that needs to be dedicated for when Moonlight Road was expanded and improved. Some additional key points: property is currently zoned for commercial, so no zoning change will need to take place for this development. No new streets are proposed. The accesses and the access drives that will come later, those will all be private. Again, access to the property is proposed off both Madison and Moonlight. And a 10-foot concrete sidewalk will be constructed as part of the project. There's been some traffic concerns with this project. Had a couple questions and wanted to try to clarify some of that. The applicant has provided a traffic impact study for the project, and our Public Works staff has reviewed it. Currently, the intersection of Madison and Moonlight is described in a level of service, A through F, which a level of service A is a free flow, which allows for the free flow of traffic and pretty unrestricted flow. Level of service F, it goes from A to F, much like grades, except there's an E in there. It's forced or breakdown flow. Currently, that intersection at AM peak, which is the time that you'd be leaving for work, is functioning at a level of service F. It doesn't function at that level of service for very long. The study said that it would continue to function with level of service F at the peak times, which would be the AM peak and the PM peak. No traffic signals proposed at this time, but will be needed at some point in the future. That is understood by Public Works and was pointed out as part of this study. One of the questions we had been asked was what triggers a need for traffic light. That is identified by an overall analysis of the intersection. There's 9 factors taken into consideration when a city would look at an intersection. They're called warrants. There's generally 9 of them. I've kind of grouped some of them together as they were similar for 8-hour traffic counts, 4-hour traffic counts, peak hour traffic counts. You have pedestrian volumes, proximity for school crossings, accident history, if it's a part of a larger road network, and proximity to a rail crossing. There's no real exactness to, yes, you meet 2 out of the 5, you need a traffic signal. It's kind of a culmination of multiple things and to the discretion of the Public Works Department. One thing when I was talking to our traffic engineer that he did note is that prematurely placing a traffic signal can always make a intersection less safe. So those are all things that are taken into consideration. They are aware that this intersection can function quite poorly at the peak hours. Generally, it functions okay at this time, and it is an intersection that in the future will need a traffic light. Staff does recommend approval of the preliminary plat. Your staff report says Madison Marketplace. Should be Madison Quarter, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant present this evening? Is there a presentation or anything you'd like to share with the commissioners?
Just here for questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any members of the community that would like to speak? If so, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and feel free to comment on this project. Commissioners, any questions, clarifying points for staff or the applicant? I did have one question, and I think I'll direct this to the applicant. It might seem silly, but